Well, I can't quit you, baby.
Welcome to the 17th installment of The Gunslinger Dark Tower Series, Book 1 by Stephen King. Narrated by The Laughing Ogre. The Gunslinger and the Dark Man. The man in black led him to an ancient killing ground to make palaver. The gunslinger knew it immediately. A Golgotha, place of the skull, and bleached skulls stared blandly up at them. Cattle, coyotes, deer, rabbits. Here the alabaster xylophone of a hen pheasant killed as she fed. There, the tiny delicate bones of a mole, perhaps killed for pleasure by a wild dog. The Golgotha was a bowl, indented into the descending slope of the mountain, and below, in easier altitudes, the gunslinger could see Joshua trees and shrub firs. The sky overhead was a softer blue than he had seen for a 12-month, and there was an indefinable something that spoke of the sea in the not-too-great distance. Jam in the west, Cuthbert, he thought wonderingly. And of course, in each skull, in each round and vacant eye, he saw the boy's face. The man in black sat on an ancient ironwood log. His boots were powdered white with dust, the uneasy bone meal of this place. He'd put his hood up again, but the gunslinger could see the square shape of his chin clearly, and the shading of his jaw. The shadowed lips twitched in a smile. "Gather wood, gunslinger. This side of the mountain is gentle, but at this altitude the cold still may put a knife in one's belly. And this is a place of death, eh?" "I'll kill you," the gunslinger said. "No, you won't. You can't. But you can gather wood. Remember your Isaac." The gunslinger had no understanding of the reference. He went wordlessly and gathered wood like a common cook's boy. The pickings were slim. There was no devil grass on this side, and the ironwood would not burn. It had become stone. He returned finally with a large armload, powdered and dusted with disintegrated bone, as if dipped in flour. The sun had sunk beyond the highest Joshua trees and had taken on a reddish glow, and peered at them with a baleful indifference through the black, torrid branches. "Excellent," the man in black said. "How exceptional you are. How methodical. I salute you." He giggled, and the gunslinger dropped the wood at his feet with a crash that ballooned up bone dust. The man in black did not start or jump. He merely began laying out the fire. The gunslinger watched fascinated as the ideogram, fresh this time, took shape. When it was finished, it resembled a small and complex double chimney about 2 feet high. The man in black lifted his hand skyward, shaking back the voluminous sleeve from a tapered, handsome hand, and brought it down rapidly, index and pinky fingers forked out in the traditional sign of the evil eye. There was a blue flash of flame, and their fire was lighted. "I have matches," the man in black said jovially. But I thought you might enjoy the magic. For a pretty gunslinger. Now cook our dinner." The folds of his robe shivered, and the plucked and gutted carcass of a plump rabbit fell on the dirt. The gunslinger spitted the rabbit wordlessly and roasted it. A savory smell drifted up as the sun went down. Purple shadows drifted hungrily over the bowl where the man in black had chosen to finally face him. The gunslinger felt hunger begin to rumble endlessly in his belly as the rabbit browned. But when the meat was cooked and its juices sealed, he handed the entire skewer wordlessly to the man in black, rummaged in his own nearly flat knapsack, and withdrew the last of his jerky. It was salty, painful to his mouth, and tasted like tears. "That's a worthless gesture," the man in black said, managing to sound angry and amused at the same time. Nevertheless, the gunslinger said, there were tiny sores in his mouth. The rest of the vitamin deprivation and the salt taste made him grin bitterly. Are you afraid of enchanted meat? Yes. The man in black slipped his hood back. The gunslinger looked at him silently. In a way, the face of the man in black was an uneasy disappointment. It was handsome and regular, with none of the marks and twists which identify a person who's been through awesome times and who has been privy to great and unknown secrets. His hair was black and of a ragged, matted length. His forehead was high, his eyes dark and brilliant. His nose was nondescript. The lips were full and kind of sensual. His complexion was pallid, as was the gunslinger's own. He finally said, I expected an older man. Not necessary. I'm nearly immortal. I could have taken a face that you more expected, of course, but I elect to show you this one. I was, born with... See, gunslinger, the sunset. The sun had departed already, and the western sky was filled with a sullen furnace light. You won't see another sunrise for what may seem a very long time, the man in black said softly. The gunslinger remembered the pit under the mountains, and then looked at the sky where the constellations sprawled in clock-spring profusion. It doesn't matter, he said softly. Now. The man in black shuffled the cards with flying, merging rapidity. The deck was huge. The design on the backs of the cards convoluted. These are tarot cards, the man in black was saying. A mixture of the standard deck and a selection of my own development. Watch closely, gunslinger. Why? I'm gonna tell your future, Roland. 7 cards must be turned, one at a time, and placed in conjunction with the others. I've not done this for over 300 years, and I suspect I've never read one quite like yours. The mocking note was creeping in again. Like a Kuvan night soldier, with a knife gripped in one hand. You're the world's last adventurer, the last crusader. How that must please you, Roland. Yet you have no idea how close you stand to the tower now, how close in time. Worlds turn about your head. Read my fortune, then, he said harshly. The first card was turned. The Hanged Man, the man in black said. The darkness had given him back his hood. Yet here, in conjunction with nothing else, it signifies strength and not death. You, gunslinger, are the Hanged Man, plodding ever onward towards your goal over all the pits of Hades. You've already dropped one cold traveler in the pit, have you not? He turned the second card. The Sailor. Note the clear brow, the hairless cheeks, the wounded eyes. He drowns, gunslinger, and no one throws out the line. The boy Jake. The gunslinger winced, said nothing. The third card was turned. A baboon stood grinningly astride a young man's shoulder. The young man's face was turned up, a grimace of stylized dread and horror on his features. Looking more closely, the gunslinger saw the baboon held a whip. The prisoner, the man in black said. The fire cast uneasy, flickering shadows over the face of the ridden man, making it seem to move and writhe in wordless terror. The gunslinger flicked his eyes away. A trifle upsetting, isn't he? The man in black said, and seemed on the verge of snickering. He turned the fourth card. A woman with a shawl over her head sat spinning at a wheel. To the gunslinger's dazed eyes, she appeared to be smiling craftily and sobbing at the same time. The Lady of Shadows, the man in black remarked. Does she look two-faced to you, gunslinger? She is. A veritable Janus. Why are you showing me this? Don't ask, the man in black said sharply. He smiled. Don't ask. Merely watch. Consider this only pointless ritual if it eases you and cools you to do so. Like church. He tittered and turned the fifth card. The sixth card. Death, the man in black said simply. Yet not for you. The gunslinger looked at it and felt a strange, crawling anticipation in his guts. The feeling was mixed with horror and joy. The whole of the emotion was unnameable. It made him feel like throwing up and dancing at the same time. The tower, the man in black said softly. The gunslinger's card occupied the center of the pattern. Each of the following four stood at one corner, like satellites circling a star. Where does that one go? The gunslinger asked. The man in black placed the tower over the hanged man, covering it completely. What does that mean? The gunslinger asked. The man in black did not answer. What does that mean? He asked raggedly. The man in black did not answer. God damn you. No answer. Then what's the seventh card? The man in black turned the seventh. A sun rose in a luminous blue sky. Cupids and sprites sprouted up all around it. The seventh is life, the man in black said softly, but not for you. Where does it fit the pattern? That is not for you to know, the man in black said. Or for me to know. He flipped the cards carelessly into the dying fire. It charred, curled, and flashed to flame. The gunslinger felt his heart quail and turn icy in his chest. Sleep now, the man in black said carelessly. Perchance to dream and that sort of thing. I'm gonna choke you dead, the gunslinger said. His legs coiled with savage, splendid suddenness, and he flew across the fire at the other. The man in black, smiling, swelled in his vision, and then retreated down a long and echoing corridor filled with obsidian pylons. The world filled with the sound of sardonic laughter, and he was falling, dying, sleeping. He dreamed. The universe was void. Nothing moved. Nothing was. The gunslinger drifted, bemused. Let us have light, the voice of the man in black said nonchalantly. And there was light. The gunslinger thought in a detached way that the light was good. Now darkness overhead with stars in it, water down below. It happened. He drifted over endless seas. Above, the stars twinkled endlessly. Land! The man in black invented. There it was. It heaved itself out of the water in endless, galvanic convulsions. It was red, arid, cracked and glazed with sterility. Volcanoes blurted endless magma like giant pimples on some ugly adolescent's baseball head. Okay, the man in black was saying, that's a start. Let's have some plants, trees, grass, and fields. There was. Dinosaurs rambled here and there, growling and wolfing and eating each other and getting stuck in bubbling, odoriferous tar pits. Huge tropical rainforests sprawled everywhere. Giant ferns waved at the sky with serrated leaves. Beetles with two heads crawled on some of them. All of this the gunslinger saw, and yet he felt big. Now, man, the man in black said softly, but the gunslinger was falling up. The horizon of this vast and fenced earth began to curve. Yes, they had all said it had curved. His teachers, they had claimed it had been proved long before the world had moved on, but this, further and further. Continents took shape before his amazed eyes and were obscured with clock springs of clouds. The world's atmosphere held it in placental sack, and the sun rising beyond the earth's shoulder. He cried out and threw an arm before his eyes. Let there be light! The voice that cried was no longer that of the man in black. It was gigantic, echoing, filling space and time between spaces. Light! Falling, falling. The sun shrank. A red planet crossed with canals whirled past him, 2 moons circling it furiously. A whirling belt of stones. A gigantic planet that seethed with gases, too huge to support itself, oblate in consequence. A ringed world which glittered with its engirdlement of icy specules. Light! Let there be! Other worlds, 1, 2, 3, far beyond the last one. Lonely ball of ice and rock twirling in dead darkness about a sun that glittered no brighter than a tarnished penny. Darkness. No, the gunslinger said, and his words were flat and echoless in the darkness. It was darker than dark. Beside it, the darkest night of man's soul was noonday. The darkness under the mountains was mere smudge on the face of light. No more, please. No more now, no more. Lights! No more, please. The stars themselves began to shrink. The whole nebula drew together and became mindless smudges. The whole universe seemed to be drawing around him. Jesus, no more, no more, no more. The voice of the man in black whispered silkily in his ear. Then renege. Cast away all thoughts of the tower. Go your way, gunslinger, and save your soul. He gathered himself, shaken and alone, enwrapped in the darkness, terrified of an ultimate, meaningless, rushing at him. He gathered himself and uttered the final, flashing imperative. No, never! Then let there be light! And there was light, crashing in on him like a hammer. A great, primordial light, and the consciousness perished. But before it, the gunslinger saw something of cosmic importance. He clutched it with agonized effort and sought himself. He fled the insanity, the knowledge impelled, and so came back to himself. It was still night. Whether the same or another, he had no way of knowing. He pushed himself up from where his demon spring at the man in black had carried him, and looked at the ironwood where the man in black had been sitting. He was gone. A great sense of despair flooded him. God, all that to do over again. And then the man in black said from behind him, Over here, gunslinger. I don't like you so close. You talk in your sleep. He tittered. The gunslinger got groggily to his knees and turned around. The fire had burned down to red embers and gray ashes, leaving the familiar decay pattern of exhausted fuel. The man in black was seated next to it, smacking his lips over the greasy remains of the rabbit. You did fairly well, the man in black said. I never could have sent that vision to Martin. He would have come back drooling. What was it? The gunslinger asked. His words were blurred and shaky. He felt that if he tried to rise, his legs would buckle. The universe, the man in black said carelessly. He burped and threw the bones into the fire where they glistened with unhealthy whiteness. The wind above the cup of the Golgotha whistled in keen unhappiness. Universe, the gunslinger said blankly. You want the tower? The man in black said. It seemed to be a question. Yes. But you shan't have it, the man in black said, and smiled with bright cruelty. I have an idea of how close to the edge that last pushed you. The tower will kill you half a world away. You know nothing of me, the gunslinger said quietly, and the smile faded from the other's lips. I made your father, and I broke him, the man in black said grimly. I came to your mother through Martin and took her. It was written, and it was. I am the furthest minion of the Dark Tower. Earth has been given into my hand. What did I see? The gunslinger asked. At the end. What was it? What did it seem to be? The gunslinger was silent, thoughtful. He felt for his tobacco, but there was none. The man in black did not offer to refill his poke either by black magic or white. There was light, the gunslinger said finally. Great white light. And then he broke off and stared at the man in black. He was leaning forward and an alien emotion was stamped on his face, writ too large for lies or denial. Wonder. You don't know, he said and began to smile. Oh, great sorcerer who brings the dead to life, you don't know. I know, the man in black said, but I don't know what. White light, the gunslinger repeated, and then a blade of grass. One single blade of grass that filled everything, and I was tiny, infinitesimal. Grass. The man in black crossed his eyes. His face looked drawn and haggard. A blade of grass? Are you sure? Yes, the gunslinger frowned. But it was purple. And so the man in black began to speak. The universe, he said, offers a paradox too great for the finite mind to grasp. As this living brain cannot conceive of a non-living brain, although it may think it can. The finite mind cannot grasp the infinite. The prosaic fact of the universe's existence single-handedly defeats the pragmatist and the cynic. There was a time, yet 100 generations before the world moved on, when mankind had achieved enough technical and scientific prowess to chip a few splinters from the great stone pillar of reality. Even then, the false light of science, knowledge if you like, shone in only a few developed countries, yet despite a tremendous increase in available facts, there were remarkably few insights. Gunslinger, our fathers conquered the disease which rots, we call cancer, and almost conquered aging, went to the moon. I don't believe that, the gunslinger said flatly, to which the man in black merely smiled and answered, You needn't. And made or discovered 100 other marvelous baubles. But this wealth of information produced little or no insight. There were no great odes written to the wonders of artificial insemination. What? Having babies from frozen sperm. Bullshit. As you wish, although not even ancients could produce children from that material. Or to the car which moves. Few, if any, seem to have grasped the principles of reality. New knowledge leads always to yet more awesome mysteries. Greater psychological knowledge of the brain makes the existence of the soul less possible, yet more probable by the same nature of the search. Do you see? Of course you don't. You're surrounded by your own romantic aura. You lie cheek and jowl daily with the arcane, yet now you approach the limits, not of belief, but of comprehension. Your face reserve entropy of the soul, but to the more prosaic. The greatest mystery of the universe offers its not life, but size. Size encompasses life, and the tower encompasses size. The child, who is most at home with wonder, says, Dad, what is above the sky? And the father says, the darkness of space. The child, what is beyond space? The father, the galaxy. The child, beyond the galaxy. The father, another galaxy. The child, beyond the other galaxies. The father, no one knows. You see, size defeats us. For the fish, the lake in which he lives is the universe. What does the fish think when he's jerked up by the mouth through the silver limits of existence and into a new universe where the air drowns him and the light is blue madness, where huge bipeds with no gills stuff it into a suffocating box and cover it with wet weeds to die? Or one might take the point of a pencil and magnify it. One reaches the point where a stunning revelation strikes home. The pencil point is not solid. It is composed of atoms which whirl and revolve like a trillion demon planets. What seems solid to us is actually only a loose net held together by gravitation. Shrunk to the correct size, the distances between these atoms might become leagues, gulfs, eons. The atoms themselves are composed of nuclei and revolving protons and electrons. One may step down further to the subatomic particles, and then what? Tachyons? Nothing? Of course not. Everything in the universe denies nothing. To suggest concludes to things is one impossibility. If you fell outward to the limit of the universe, would you find a board fence and signs reading dead end? No. You might find something hard and rounded, as the chick must see the egg from inside. And if you should peck through that shell, what great and torrential light might shine through your hole at the end of space? Might you look through and discover our entire universe is but part of one atom on a blade of grass? Might you be forced to think that by burning a twig you incinerate an eternity of eternities, that existence rises not to one infinity of them? Perhaps you saw what place our universe plays in the scheme of things, as an atom on a blade of grass. Could it be that everything we can perceive, from the infinitesimal virus to the distant Horsehead Nebula, is contained in one blade of grass? A blade that may have existed for only a day or two in an alien time flow? What if that blade should be cut off by a sigh? Would it begin to die? Would the rot seep into your own universe and our lives, turning everything yellow and brown, desiccated? Perhaps it's already begun to happen. We say the world has moved on. Maybe we really mean that it has begun to dry up. Think how small such a concept of things makes us. If a God watches over all, does he actually mete out justice for a race of gnats among an infinitude of races of gnats? Does his eye see the sparrow fall when the sparrow is less than a speck of hydrogen floating disconnected in the depths of space? And if he does see, what must the nature of such a God be? Where does he live? How is it possible to live beyond infinity? Imagine the sand of the Mohaine Desert which you crossed to find me, and imagine 1 trillion universes, not worlds, but universes, encapsulated in each grain of that desert, and within each universe of infinity of others. We tower over these universes from our pitiful grass vantage point. With one swing of your boot, you may knock 1 billion worlds flying off into darkness, in a chain never to be completed. Sighs, Gunslinger, sighs. Yet suppose further. Suppose that all the worlds, all the universes met in a single nexus, a single pylon, a tower, a stairway, perhaps to the Godhead itself. Would you dare, Gunslinger? Could it be that somewhere above all of the endless reality there exists a room? You dare not. You dare not. Someone has dared, the Gunslinger said. Who would that be? God, the Gunslinger said softly. His eyes gleamed. God has dared. Or is there an empty room, seer? I know not. Fear passed over the man in black's bland face, as soft and dark as a buzzard's wing. And furthermore, I don't ask. It might be unwise. Afraid of being struck dead? The Gunslinger asked sardonically. Perhaps afraid of an accounting, the man in black replied. And there was silence for a while. The night was very long. The Milky Way sprawled above them in great splendor, yet terrifying in its emptiness. The Gunslinger wondered what he would feel if that inky sky should split open and let in a torrent of light. The fire, he said. I'm cold. And I think we'll leave it there. We'll pick up The next installment, probably in about somewhere between a week, maybe two. I'll try to keep it at about a half hour and we'll get through this last part. I hope you're sure I've been enjoying it. I do love this story. If you were wondering why all voices dropped off in the long explanations, because there are no quotation marks around it. It's as if at that point Roland is going back in his memory or something to that effect. So that's where, there's no man in black. I'm just basically doing my best to narrate. Not something super easy for me, something I'm working on and experimenting with, and I'm sure enjoying it. I hope you are once again. So join us next time as we continue The Dark Tower, Series 1, The Gunslinger by Stephen King. Ha ha!